Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sangham namasami. So we've started this winter retreat with 10 days of group practice, and today is the ending of these 10 days. And I have never noticed until more than this year how how lovely it is to sit together and how supportive. I spent many years sitting with a large community of monks and nuns. In fact, we used to have 2 months retreats every year, just doing what we've been doing for the last 10 days, just sitting and walking like this for a couple of months. And there came a time when, as you can imagine, where you feel you get tired of sitting in groups, and even though it is very strengthening, and you have very little, in a way, it's very little effort in terms of having to choose between one thing or another. You don't have to put a lot of effort because everything is done for you. The structure is there, you get up in the morning, you just having other people around makes it so much easier. But, it's always very important to find out how one can continue to practice without the support or without the structure around ourselves. And besides the fact, when you've done it for many years, then you come to, it's like everything else. You get fed up with it. And also, I have to say, we did receive some, 2 months of daily teachings, like 2 or 3 times a day we would have a lot of teachings, and that was quite wonderful, but also at some point one needs a bit of silence and just a kind of a space that seems a bit personal, even though it's not that personal, but it's just a space, a silent space to reflect oneself on the Dhamma. So these 10 days has been like a new kind of happy reconnection with group sitting, and just the happiness of appreciating being with Dhamma brothers, Dhamma sisters, Dhamma friends, and feeling just this sort of the loveliness of a group of people whose mindfulness is increasing. As the day go by, you can feel there's a calming of the mind, there is a kind of a deepening, a sense of deeper peace, even though our minds, our consciousness may be going through even difficult stories, difficult mind states, painful things and so on. Yet there is a field of mindfulness that's just tangible, and we can all benefit from it. That's what we call the support of a group. There's a field of mindfulness there, which can make the mind relatively easy to be focused upon. You notice when you're on your own, it's very easy to be distracted by all the things that we find in our rooms, or just the options that certainly arise from just being on one's own. You can do what you want, but so it's much harder to find a sense of discipline, inner discipline, to keep the priorities clear. Priorities in terms of formal practice, in terms of Dhamma, in terms of solitude, just being able to appreciate this time of solitude and so on. And another feeling that came very strongly, there's a lot of different perception that came back for me. It's interesting. One that was the feeling of simplicity, just reducing a lot of our usual activities. That's already one way of making things simpler, but also having a structure and a rhythm of just sitting and walking has been brings a sense of simplicity. You just come and then you go. You just be careful to be on time, a bit sensitive to the people around you. You have a certain amount of responsibilities just in terms of living with a group of people, but there is something very simple just about sitting and walking. And I have appreciated it so much, which it brought me back to what the heart of this life is about, in a way. The heart of a monastic lifestyle, which can be lost when there are so much going on. It's very easy to get lost and be caught up into a lot of external activities, respond to demands, to external demands. As you see, even like today when we are on retreat, there's so many people coming and wanting to really be here and offer to the Sangha their support, their kindness. We even had a blessing, a wedding blessing ceremony today in the middle of 10-day retreat. So it is an interesting place, isn't it? Where, in a way, I had to kind of remind myself today, as we were doing this chanting for this blessing, these wedding blessings, I had this memory of this monastery that I visited in Thailand, which is a monastery of a very famous monk in Thailand who is quite eccentric. He never see him sitting down. He's crouching down, and he smokes the pipe. So that's how he receives his disciples. He's crouching down, and you don't see him sitting, but he is kind of revered as a great holy being, a great saint. You could say a great. I don't know if I want to use the word enlightened, I don't know, but certainly he is revered as this very pure, holy person. And his monastery is like, it's like coming from a forest monastery in Thailand, which are very quiet, usually very focused on formal practice and very simple. And then you go to this other monastery, I can't remember his name now, Ajahn Lumpur, that's his name. And he has the ability to have lots of psychic powers and can do anything. And people think that he can do anything. But anyway, his monasteries is a complete sort of, it's a complete marketplace. You've got him walking in the middle of a row of people giving him money, which he gives to a hospital and to kings for charities and so on. And then on one side you had a woman being beaten up. She's on the floor. She's lying on her tummy on the floor. She's being beaten up and exorcised, healed one way or the other, and everything. And then you have got a group of monks looking very formal and very restrained and very sort of respectful on the other side, and people walking and coming down the stairs and up and milling around. It's just an amazing place. And in a way, Amaravati, this image came back to me when I saw Amaravati today. There was so many people going around and walking and talking, and the kids running around and so on. So it's a test for our mindfulness, isn't it? Mindfulness is, Amaravati is definitely a place of a great testing place for us. When you're in nature, like I spend a number of years just in the forest, and in Thailand, and when you're in nature, Ajahn Chah used to say, half of the work is done. Trees, people, your own mind alone. half of the work is done. And then, creepy crawlies and snakes and stuff like that around, makes you very mindful, because that's all you have to rely upon. Can't rely on very much, not of a hospital nearby or anything like that. So you just need to be very vigilant about where you put your foot and what's going around and so on. But, when you're in a more sort of busy place like Amaravati, which draws a lot of people and brings a lot of people here, because it's so rare, for one thing, because of the rarity of this place, and also because it has particular, a peace here that many people can sense and many people feel. They makes them very happy to be here. And so we can have a lot of ideas about practice, and we can have a lot of perceptions, about how things should be. And I think people who have had this kind of perception haven't stayed at Amaravati for very long, because you can't be here and have a lot of fixed views about things. They get shattered very quickly. If you think the place should be quiet and calm, with people on retreat and they should shut up and not talk, I mean, in a way, there's a bit of a Zen nun in me that really like the sort of Zen style, where you just walk in line, shut up for a month or two, and there's something I really like. I find it beautiful, and I find it uplifting too, quite uplifting. In my mind, I find it very uplifting, the idea of being quiet. I used to love it, actually. I used to love this long retreat, which were very formal. And then things changed, things have changed, and that, you just need to go with the flow. And then a few years ago, Ajahn Sumedho talked about conviviality. When I came back from America after spending a few years in conviviality, I mean, what conviviality? I mean, what are we supposed to do in conviviality? We're supposed to talk to each other? We're supposed to pat each other on the back, and say, hello, how are you? Are you doing well in your practice? Are you supposed to smile? Oh my God, don't have to smile to everybody, be friendly with everybody. I mean, it's bad enough during the year when you have to be friendly with everybody all the time, quote unquote. My mind was like, oh no, give me a break, 2 months of just not engaging with anybody, not talking to anybody, and not smiling, particularly when I don't want to. What a relief, it's like, a sigh of relief. And then conviviality. But because I do have a profound love for Lompo Sumedho, and I completely, no matter what happens in our relationship with him or how we manifest in some situation, I just have a profound trust in his Dhamma. So immediately, during the first time when I heard this word conviviality, I thought, obviously, there is something in there that I need to, I get interested in that. What it means conviviality on a silent retreat, when we finally put the work down, finally put our interaction down, finally stop being social, finally we don't have to, be somebody for anybody else. What a relief. And then it was in 2004, I still remember it, and what was interesting is that as I was kind of taking this as an object of contemplation and just noticing my reaction around it, like just simply like, oh gosh, that conviviality, I hate that, I don't have to be friendly with anybody. And then suddenly calming down around this, cooling down a bit, and my mind just kind of going a bit more center and getting more interested and seeing, what does that mean really, be convivial, just using it as a reflection. What does it mean? And it really worked on me, I remember. There was a real sense that this word, just a simple word, seemed to kind of produce some sort of ferment for transformation. It was very strange, It was like a material that just seemed to kind of transform something. It's hard to say, really, but by the end of it, I realized that it was such an important word, such an important suggestion for Ajahn Sumedho, because from my previous retreats, where I was like a space, sort of, just doing my things, not wanting to have anything to do with anybody else, just getting on with my practice, and so on, and not wanting to be interested in what other people were doing, particularly, and not noticing that in this attitude there is a certain degree of aversion. There's a certain element of leave me in peace. Don't get on my cushion. Don't get on my feet. Don't get on my cushion. Just leave me alone. Don't you see? I'm just practicing metta now. Keep away from me, please. From that kind of attitude of people are in the way. People are in my way, please get out of here, To realizing that people are no one else than yourself. That was the end of my insight. It's like, by the end of 3 months, it was very clear that I had lost that tendency to actually see myself as somebody that has to be got out of the way. And even though we don't think we relate to ourselves in that way. We think, oh, maybe I just have aversion to myself. But there is anyway, for me, this process of contemplation and reflection around this word, conviviality, brought a sense of realization that actually I began to relax and to feel that I was fine with myself. Myself was okay. I was happy with myself even. And then other people suddenly I perceive other people much more friendly. It's like, oh, everybody's fine in my field of awareness. Everybody's perfectly fine. There's no problem. Nobody's bothering me. Nobody is in my way. And that was the end of the process. Suddenly, just one suggestion of Ajahn Sumedho for me brought a very good result. That's what I mean by trusting in something that at first you think, oh, conviviality, what a stupid word, honestly. We're convivial enough for 9 months of the year. Do we have to carry on being, convivial? So it was just a transformation, just of suddenly realizing that it was an inner attitude rather than an external kind of, active engagement with anybody. So this inner attitude is so important in the practice. So that's one thing that kind of came up for me during the retreat as I actually talking about, the last few retreats, this change of heart, of not seeing anybody as a problem, and of seeing practice just at any moment, any given moment. And so this takes me to another theme that came to my mind. It was a question, what is love? I mean, my meditations do bring up these things sometimes, not always. What is love? I mean, this is a theme that's gone, for, what is love? What is, just, that's a question that popped up, I didn't ask for this question, it just popped up. What is love, I said, oh God, metta, what is love? Do I want to bother with that, And, but I did get interested. And what came to my mind, it was something very funny. I say, what is love? And it's quite a strong voice. It's sort of, just be where you are. That's love. Just be where you are. Be where you are. It kind of echoed the teaching of Ruth Denison, who's the kind of grandmother of Dhamma grandmother in America, who used to say to people, never take your mind away from where you are. Don't take your mind away from where you are. And that was the sense of, just don't get caught up in the objects of the mind. Realize that being with everything, being present, I mean really what it meant, being awake, being mindful, is real love. Sometimes we don't know how to express this love, anyway, that was for me. I don't think it will speak to anybody else, perhaps, but that was a very powerful thing, just to realize that having a mind that is not clinging to anything is the power of love, is a loving mind. And of course I had a phone call with my sister at some point. We talked about love too. And she's also on the path, but in the Christian yoga kind of path. And then I was saying that I was saying to her, she's a good Dhamma friend, and I was sharing with her the fact that I felt there are certain things I did not understand. I did not, that maybe I was just deluding myself about certain things that I felt I really needed to understand more deeply. And then, what blood sisters are like. So she started telling me about when she felt that I was not loving enough and caring enough, and I got really upset with that, because I make so much effort when I go home to the family to be caring and loving and all the, well, in my eyes anyway, I make quite a bit of effort, so her going on about, yes, I noticed when, so that was another interesting development on my theme of what's love, what is love, So being with that was actually very hard, just to be with the listening of my sister's kind of version on me. I realized I wasn't particularly loving then. I was sort of, reactive, and then I said, family dynamic are always neurotic anyway, Sort of. I mean, I didn't say that just like that, but I wasn't particularly being with, it was. But my conversation with her had an effect. What was interesting is that, when you meditate, as I was saying, my previous retreat years ago, when we didn't have this conviviality kind of element brought up into the space, it's easy for me when I start meditating to go back a little bit into that mode. I'm back into formal practice, but don't bother me. I don't want to talk to anybody. It's quite easy, it's quite an easy mode to go back. I quite enjoy that space of being alone. And then I began to notice that in that space of wanting to be alone, there was a real lack of friendliness. it was like tight again, the sense of the same old thing that I was mentioning to you, that sense of freezing again a little bit, so that this is me. It's not even a sense of me, but it's just a sense of recollection, you could say, just kind of restrained and quiet, and I like this quietness, and I like this sense of simplicity, of just sitting, walking, and not having to engage. So I began to notice also, that helped me to notice that there was a kind of tight energy, it's like something a bit sort of, slightly frozen around me. And so I began to be aware of this, and I started relaxing again, and things changed in such a nice way, People started relating to me more friendly almost immediately, It's funny, not talking to me particularly, but I could imagine that being a big woman, and being a sort of senior nun and so on, if I start getting a little bit sort of on the frozen side and a bit on the Zen sort of look, I probably scare people quite, it can be quite maybe scary, and say, oh my God, don't get near her, she's probably on the way to enlightenment. Don't get close to, this one. In fact, people have said that about me in the past, until they start talking to me and they realize I'm not that sort of tough and, that sort of frightening nun. So that was a development of talking with my sister. I did reflect and say, maybe she's right. I need to work more on this loving and kindness, this metta. Not as a kind of words and having to go into, having to pray and having to invoke various loving being in my life, but just to notice, to bring this the imminence of awareness of that awakened Buddha nature mind right here and now, and that awakened awareness, Buddha awareness, suddenly just unfrosted and defreezed everything, and started to make me feel more balanced, more kind of relaxed, not losing the strength and the effort of practice particularly, but something is softening at the edges, softening, relaxing in a healthy way. Because we have to be very careful with the practice, that through the concentration, even a little concentration, we're not talking about jhanas or anything like that, but even just the concentration of a group can, if we're not careful, we over-concentrate, not into absorption particularly, but we get over-concentrated, and it's a danger in practice, it's a danger in the sense that it's a little out of balance, and then that over-concentration can make us feel like everything is a confrontational experience, which takes you back to one passage of the Buddhist teaching, which I can't remember in details, not even in, but basically, the element of concentration is confrontation. That's what concentration does. It gives an energy of, it's an energy of confronting. I can find a passage for you if you're interested. It's a shame that I don't remember, but anyway. So this is something that needs to be one needs to be attentive to. And then the third aspect of this retreat, the last aspect of this retreat, was an important one, which goes together with simplicity and reconnecting with this rhythm, this gentle rhythm of not just sitting, walking, but a rhythm of mindfulness. It's like a rhythm that, even though your body is moving around, even though you're changing from one room to another, there is a presence of mindfulness which creates something very harmonious somehow. Something very pleasant, I would say, for me. Where you feel you're part of let's call it like a rhythm, where your mind remains simple. You engage with activities of life, but your mind is in that lovely, is a rhythm between active and presence. It's like you've got that lovely sense of connection, activity and presence, stillness. Activity and stillness, stillness and activity. They seem to kind of be together. It's a lovely sense of being still and being active in stillness in the midst of actions. And we've been chanting this sutta for a week or so on the Anatalakkhana Sutta, on the characteristics of the 5 khandhas of anicca, dukkha, anatta. And the last paragraph, the Buddha is dialoguing with some of his monks and basically telling them, are the 5 khandhas going through the various, the body, and then the sensations, and then the perception, and then the mental activities, mental formations, and then consciousness, 6th consciousness, are they, he's going through all of them, and are they selfless, are they empty of self, are they impermanent, are they suffering, and so on. And so, he goes quite thoroughly in a very simple way. If you are a scholar, maybe on Buddhism, it could sound a bit simplistic just to hear this dialogue, about is this dukkha or is this not dukkha? Is it impermanent? Is it not permanent? Or is it permanent? If it is dukkha, if it is not, is it constant? Can you basically, he doesn't use the word control, but if something that you cannot control, is it really you? If your consciousness was really you, could you say to your consciousness, don't get sick, don't, do what I want, So it's, he goes through this simple dialogue, to probe with his disciples, these 3 characteristics in relationship to the 5 khandhas. And then at the end, he goes into, once you realize those three characters, once you realize them, once you have investigated them and you've seen clearly and you've had profound insight into the nature of those three characteristics, then there is a process of disenchantment, nibbida, a process of of disinterest, dispassion. And so this is always a word, there's certain words in the Buddhist jargon that really get me, in the sense that even though they touch my heart and make me feel very joyful, I know that many people I teach, these words can really get them depressed almost, like disenchanted. Everybody loves to be enchanted by life, have this kind of lovely feeling of joyful rapture and joyful enchantment. So eventually you become disenchanted, and this word nibbida has been translated over decades, by different people, different words, which, disgusted, you become disenchanted, disgusted, they're just horrible negative words like that. So today I thought, I like to this word nibbida kept coming up in my mind, and obviously I had forgotten. We were chanting that regularly, of course. But because it's a word I like, actually, I like this word very much. And nibbida, I was checking what some of the scholars had found about this. What some of the meanings in terms of translation, how many translations there were. And one translation, and I found something very interesting by a scholar called Andy Olansky, who is somebody I know quite well. And he did some research on nibbida because, he's got a good sense of humor. He says, here we are, get into the Buddhist teaching, and the first thing you just need to be disgusted with the five khandhas, and so on. So where does that leave us? Right from the beginning, people who just start on the Buddhist path, they read this translation, and you come to a point of complete disgust and disenchantment and dispassion and so on. So that kind of leaves you a little bit sort of startled, wondering what the Buddha means by this. And what Andy had done in his research, as he say, going through various footnotes and various this and that, he discovered that actually nibbida, the meaning, if you look at the root, and it means actually, bida means finding, and ni is like no finding, not finding. And then he quotes a story that he finds somewhere, I don't know, maybe in one of the commentaries, I'm not sure whether they are in the suttas. But it's a story of a dog who found a bone on the ground which had been sort of left lying in the elements for weeks on end, and it's all kind of dried up and white and has nothing left on it. And this dog just latches on the bones and just start gnawing at it and chew it and gnawing at it, and they find nothing. There's nothing left, not a bit of flesh on it. And finally, he just drops it and feels disgusted and goes away. So the idea that he didn't find anything that actually nourished him, he didn't find any nourishment, anything that he was no satisfaction. So he felt disgusted and just went. So that's really, it's an example to perhaps understand better what the Buddha means by nibbida, by disenchantment, this sense of disgust with these khandhas. It's like at some point through the, Andy was talking about this, it's for the high-end meditator, really. You don't start maybe just feeling disgusted with things. It's like you need to understand, this. That there is no nourishment, for example, in being attached to the five khandhas, but most of us find, through a process, through a trick of delusion, a lot of nourishment, clinging, grasping, holding to the five khandhas. So to come to nibbida from the beginning, when we're still grasping, finding a lot of pleasure and happiness, clinging to our thoughts, clinging to our feelings clinging to our body, the pleasure in the body, the happiness of a physical satisfaction, and so on. As long as we have this attachment and we haven't seen the suffering of this attachment, feeling disgusted with the five khandhas is almost impossible. So this is the disgust that comes when you, through thorough investigation, thorough seeing of the way it is, you come to understand that there is no nourishment really in attaching to any of those khandhas. The Buddha doesn't say that the khandhas in themselves are the problem. It says the attachment, because why? Because the attachment, the manifestation of the symptoms of attachment is very simple. Buddha was a master in its suffering. Simple. Attachment. If you suffer, check it out. You're just having a bout of sickness of ignorance, it's like you've caught up on ignorance bug, and we don't need to beat ourselves up. Ignorance is not a personal fault, it's not a personal defect. It's just a force in this universe, that is coursing through everybody's mind. And so we are, all, as we don't say this very often, in fact I've never heard it in the West, when a Dhamma teacher in the East, in Thailand, starts a Dhamma talk, he always say, we all brothers and sisters in old age, sickness and death. And this becomes quite significant in the sense that we don't have to take things so personally. It's something we all share, and the same thing we share is ignorance. We all Dharma brothers and sisters in delusion, in greed, in hatred, in those three poisons, those three fires, as they're called sometimes in some tradition. And we're all burning with those three things, greed, hatred, and delusion. So we're all brothers and sisters in that realm. It's not a personal stigma. That takes us to contentment, which is another word which is I find important to reflect upon, which is santuti in Pali. Santuti is a word which means contentment, and if you look a little deeper, it's actually also, its meaning is also happiness, because when you are contented, then you're also happy. Contentment is basically feeling that you have what you need. When you have what you need, you're contented. You notice if you're hungry and you eat a meal, you're content. You have had what the body needs. When you feel cold and you have some heat, you're content. You have what you want, some warmth. When you are upset about something and somebody respond to you in a way that you expect them to respond, then you are content. That satisfies your happiness. So all of us have a certain degree of contentment, which makes us aware of its opposite, discontent and unhappiness. So that's a quality that came very strongly to me in this retreat, how we can so easily fall prey of this energy of discontent and forget that the actual foundation of this life is contentment. Now, contentment is not easy, again, when we are so close to so many worldly dhammas. We have access to all the internets we can have here. We have people coming in and out. We have a lot of different traditions around us. We have many different teachers. We have lots of views. We have very intelligent mind. Many people here have very intelligent, clever mind. Can think very well, and so we have in a way, we are exposed to an enormous amount of options, an enormous a wealth of everything. Everything. A wealth of amazing things. It's a time which is so unique in a way. It's incredible. I mean, this day and age in the country, in a Western country, we have, an amazing availability of things, so unbeknown to us, we think that's going to bring us contentment, but when we have journeyed around all these different options, we discovered that it breeds, it's like a factory of discontent. So the superficial aspect of this, myriad of options, which gives us the impression that having this myriad of possibilities is going to bring a degree of contentment, because at least if I'm not happy with that, then I can go with this. And if I'm not happy with this, then I can go with that, That seems, I don't think many people here have, I don't know, I don't know you, I don't know many people here, but I would think that you have already seen that pattern, of just moving from one thing to another, hoping to find contentment by moving on to the next patch of grass. But, so many of us here being so exposed to so many possibilities, to so many social issues, to so many access to, a capacity to use our intelligence, and we have also a society which is in a way encouraging this intelligence to manifest and to be spoken out loudly. People go on march, people, and I was just reading recently something by a very well-known professor at MIT, I think he's professor of English, Chomsky, very well-known thinker. And one thing what he was saying, in a way, it was very touching. He was saying that Obama was the least worst in the terrible situation that America is in. It was a less worst thing that could happen. I mean, I'm not sure I'm quoting, but you understand what I'm saying. And he was saying that actually, all the new thing that all the evolution, all the the freedom that has taken place over the last 30 years, 40 years, have been the result of the 60s movement. The movement in the 60s, where people were really shouting for freedom, telling people what they want, expressing their, being fed up with the status quo of American society at the time. And he was really saying that all these wonderful things happening in America at the moment is actually the result of the movement of the 60s, where people were really screaming for freedom. So you can see we have a society that has this, seed for expressing a freedom, which is quite amazing in some ways. And here we are. What is contentment? What is contentment in a traditional form? So we have to go to another degree, really. We're not talking contentment about the social affair of our society, whether it's in the Sangha society or in the outside society. We're talking about the contentment that is needed to let go of the world altogether. How much do we need? How much do we need to come to the point of nibbida, of seeing truly that each khandha is an old bone which hasn't got the nourishment that we need or we want at some point, isn't it? I mean, it's a question we need to all of us ask. Maybe that's not what we want to do. Maybe after all, liberation is not what we want. And that's fine. And sometimes we want it, sometimes we don't want it. We can agree on that. But, how much do we want to come to that point of realization of Dhamma, that is, doesn't need a lot to come to the end of suffering, doesn't need a lot to come to the end of delusion, doesn't need a lot, So it's, we don't have an easy task, I mean, it's pretty, it's, I have to say, I mean, having spent 2 or 3 years, in the East, where the society is as fixed as, is basically fixed in concrete there, nothing moves and you feel will never ever move, the Sangha, the ordained Sangha, the monastic Sangha is just completely fixed at some degree and completely part and parcel of the society there. Everything it's actually easy for consciousness because you don't have to think much. The options are not that great, So at some level, it's the good part of it is that you can really give all your attention to Dhamma. You can forget about the world, worldly issues, and you can get on with the monastic life. Here, monastic life is mixed with many other complexities that is not that easy to handle. And I think for me, in my situation as a Buddhist nun here, I find that it's very important to not repress what we think we should not think. But to, the only way to move forward in a complex situation like this one, let's say, is to move forward through consciousness. Through allowing consciousness to manifest in everything that is happening in our mind, not through forcefully using means of aversion or anger or righteousness or anything like that. The result of that is disastrous. The Buddha says it so clearly. Being righteous about our own anger doesn't work. Anger is not solved by anger. It's solved by metta. It's solved by kindness. So during this retreat, as we carry on, and we find ourselves sometimes in very complex situations, not just externally, because externally things have got quite simplified. But in terms of internally, sometimes things can get, a little sort of chaotic, or, we can have, the mind can begin to release things, can begin to, you allow your mind to bring up all kind of, you let things come up into consciousness. Like some people were telling me just recently, sharing that during their time here, memory from the past, memory from way back, just started coming up. Stories from childhood, very clear, detailed story of childhood would come up. So we begin to, the meditation is not here to shut the mind down and get into a dull, concentrated state, which some people can do easily. Having a dull, concentrated state of mind is not what the Buddha was talking about when he talks about meditation and the balancing factors of effort, mindfulness, and concentration. He was not talking about dulling the mind and sleeping. He was talking about this fine balance, which each one of us has to find in a way. It's a balancing act, I don't think I've never walked on a rope, up in the air. But I would imagine if you're one of those, rope walker, you will need quite a bit of, falling this way and falling that way, or even falling on the ground altogether before you actually get in the right balance. And it's the same thing. Mindfulness, effort, and concentration in our practice of meditation is like sometimes too much effort, too much concentration, too much, not enough mindfulness, too much of this, not enough concentration. And so this is the details of our practice that we are attending to at the moment, and so the factors of meditation, and then the capacity to be very, very patient, keeping things very simple, using this beautiful rhythm, stillness, activity, keeping the mind still, mindful, aware, reminding ourselves again and again, again and again. Sometimes I feel here there's not enough reminders, Sometimes we forget, we start running a business. We run the kitchen, we're running the office, we're running, running the monastery, it's like a business. But that's not a business, it's a place of reminding to be mindful. This is a business of mindfulness, if you want one here. That's how I see it. And I really like the idea of being reminded, of stop a minute, just stop. What am I doing now? And we need a sati, after all, means to remember. So this is if you want a business at Amaravati, it's a business of remembering, the sati business, satipanya business. That's how I like to see it myself. Not very good at it myself. Don't imagine that I'm telling you how you should be. But I'm needing it myself. This is why I like to have it here more. More out in the open, more out in the, in the forefront of this life. So as we, I think we're going to feel the brunt a little bit of losing our lovely sense of group friendship in the practice. I think we can feel that because then we are maybe more on our own now, and this is a new, a new rhythm, a new sort of challenge, a new style. But I hope that we all encourage each other, not to be the perfect Buddhist or the perfect meditator, but to just to remember, to remember why are we here for? To remind ourselves, gently, kindly, softly. So.